In the ancient land of Israel, there lived a young shepherd named David. He was the youngest son of a man named Jesse, and he spent his days tending to his father's flock of sheep. Though he was small in stature compared to his towering brothers, David possessed a deep faith in God and an unwavering spirit. One day, the Israelites found themselves engaged in a fierce battle against their longtime rivals, the Philistines. The two armies had gathered on opposite sides of a valley, each preparing for the inevitable clash. Leading the Philistine forces was a fearsome giant named Goliath, a man of immense size and strength who struck terror into the hearts of the Israelite soldiers. Day after day, Goliath would stride out to the middle of the valley, challenging the Israelites to send their best warrior to face him in single combat. "Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me," Goliath would bellow. "If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." Yet no one dared to accept the Philistines' challenge, for Goliath was a formidable foe, standing over 9 feet tall and clad in heavy armor. As the standoff continued, David's father, Jesse, sent him to the battlefield to check on his brothers and bring them supplies. When David arrived, he was shocked to see the Israelite army cowering in fear at Goliath's taunts. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?" David exclaimed. David's words caught the attention of King Saul, the ruler of Israel. Saul summoned the young shepherd and offered him the chance to face Goliath in combat. But David, undaunted by the giant's size and reputation, refused Saul's offer of armor and sword, saying, "I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them." Instead, he chose to face Goliath with only his shepherd's staff, a sling, and 5 smooth stones. As Goliath approached, David spoke words that would echo through the ages. "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you." With those words, David loaded his sling and hurled a single stone, which struck Goliath in the forehead. The mighty giant, felled by a simple projectile, crashed to the ground, and David finished him off by cutting off his head with Goliath's own sword. The Philistine army, seeing their champion defeated, turned and fled in terror, and the Israelites pursued them, emerging victorious. David's triumph over Goliath had not only secured a decisive victory for his people, but it had also cemented his reputation as a brave and skillful warrior, destined for greatness. But what was the secret behind David's victory? Why was this young shepherd able to overcome the seemingly invincible Goliath? The answer lies in the biblical account, which reveals the deeper spiritual and theological significance of this iconic confrontation. At the heart of David's victory was his unwavering faith in God. Unlike the Israelite soldiers, who were paralyzed by fear and doubt, David trusted in the power of the Almighty to deliver him from the Philistine giant. In his famous words to Goliath, David made it clear that he was not relying on his own strength or skill, but on the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel. David's faith was forged through his experiences as a shepherd, where he had faced and overcome threats to his flock. He had protected his sheep from the attacks of lions and bears, and he knew that the same God who had delivered him then would not abandon him now. This deep trust in the divine gave David the courage and confidence to face Goliath, even when the odds seemed hopelessly stacked against him. But David's victory was not just a triumph of faith, it was also a demonstration of his humility and obedience to God's will. Unlike Saul's offer of armor and sword, David chose to rely on the simple tools of his trade, the shepherd's staff and the sling. He knew that true power did not lie in the strength of man-made weapons, but in the power of God working through him. Furthermore, David's decision to use a single smooth stone, rather than a volley of projectiles, reveals his deep trust in the Lord's guidance. He knew that God would direct the stone to its mark, and he did not need to rely on his own skill or multiple attempts to ensure victory. The biblical account also highlights the contrast between David and Goliath, not just in size and strength, but in their character and worldview. Goliath, the mighty Philistine warrior put his trust in his own prowess and the power of his impressive arsenal of weapons. He viewed the conflict as a mere test of physical might, and he scoffed at the idea of facing a young shepherd. In contrast, David saw the battle as a spiritual struggle, a clash between the true God of Israel and the false gods of the Philistines. He understood that the outcome would not be determined by the relative size or strength of the combatants, but by the will of the Almighty. This perspective, rooted in his deep faith, gave David a crucial advantage over the prideful and overconfident Goliath. As the story unfolds, we see that David's victory was not just a personal triumph, but a pivotal moment in the history of Israel. The Philistines, who had long oppressed the Israelites, were decisively defeated, and the way was paved for David's eventual rise to kingship. But the significance of David's victory over Goliath extends far beyond the immediate context of the battle. It has become an enduring symbol of the power of faith, humility, and trusting God to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. Throughout history, the story of David and Goliath has inspired countless individuals and communities to face their own giants with courage and faith. It reminds us that true strength does not lie in physical prowess or material wealth, but in the steadfast belief that God is greater than any challenge we may face. Moreover, the narrative of David and Goliath offers profound theological insights into the nature of God's relationship with his people. It demonstrates that the Almighty is not limited by human limitations, and that he can use the weak and the humble to accomplish his divine purposes. In the face of overwhelming odds, David's victory over Goliath serves as a powerful reminder that God's power is not measured by the standards of the world, but by the depth of our faith and the sincerity of our obedience to his will. As we reflect on this timeless story, we can draw a number of important lessons that can guide us in our own spiritual journeys. First and foremost, the story of David and Goliath reminds us of the importance of cultivating a deep and unwavering faith in God. Like David, we must be willing to trust in the Lord's power and guidance, even when the circumstances seem bleak. Secondly, the narrative teaches us the value of humility and obedience. David's choice to eschew Saul's armor and rely on the simple tools of his trade demonstrates his willingness to submit to God's will, rather than pursuing his own agenda. In our own lives, we must be willing to let go of our own preconceptions and trust in the divine plan, even when it does not align with our own desires or expectations. Furthermore, the story of David and Goliath highlights the importance of spiritual discernment. David recognized that the battle against Goliath was not merely a physical confrontation, but a spiritual struggle between the true God of Israel and the false gods of the Philistines. In our own lives, we must be attuned to the spiritual realities that underlie the challenges we face, and seek God's guidance in navigating them. Finally, the narrative of David and Goliath reminds us that God often chooses to work through the weak and the humble, rather than the mighty and the powerful. This truth is a source of hope and encouragement for all who feel overwhelmed by the challenges they face, for it reminds us that the Lord's strength is made perfect in our weakness. As we continue to reflect on this timeless story, may it inspire us to deepen our faith, cultivate humility, and seek God's guidance in all that we do. For in the end, the secret behind David's victory over Goliath lies not in his own prowess, but in the power of the Almighty God who empowered him to triumph over the greatest of challenges.